Right, there we are. We have started recording. So please prepare yourselves for quite an interactive session, hopefully on the master plan, the 12-step master plan on how to pass the NG1 and IG1 exam. So let's get right into it. Firstly, a little bit about me if you don't know who I am or why I am remotely qualified to tell you how to pass this exam. So my name is Will Taylor. I am a chartered member of IOSH. I've been chartered now for 10 years. And I'm the founder and the owner, managing director, whatever you want to call me, of Compassa. And we deliver the world's only online smart video courses for IOSH and NEBOSH. So we are revolutionizing how these courses are delivered. And I'm also an ex-NEBOSH team leader. So I'm not an examiner anymore. So I used to be a team leader. I have been an examiner for the international and national general certificates and also for the national diploma. In fact, I used to write exam questions and marking schemes as well as mark for the diploma. And I also had to moderate and check my colleagues' examiners' marking. And I had to do remarks when there was some kind of dispute over the marking as well. So got a fair bit of experience. I mean, I was an examiner, I think, for about 7 or 8 years, so quite a long time. I have most of the NEBOSH qualifications. I've got a national diploma. I've got the environmental diploma. I've got a Bachelor of Science with honours in safety and environmental management. And if you count all of the certificates that I've got, I think I've done something like 13 NEBOSH exams. So that's a lot of NEBOSH examining if you add up all the hours. And I've been a health and safety professional since 2001, which is scarily a very long time now. That's 23 years or thereabouts. So what I'm going to walk you through, this 12-step plan has delivered for Compassa overall since we launched. So since December of 2012, we've had hundreds of students do the qualification for us. And overall, we have an 85% pass rate. That compares extremely favorably with the average national pass rates across all providers and all methods of delivery. I can't reveal what the national pass rate is. That is strictly confidential, and I would be in a lot of trouble if I shared that. But needless to say, I'm very happy with our 85% pass rate. And given that this is delivered through e-learning, it's an online course, it's not a classroom-based course, I think that pass rate is indeed quite exceptional. And this is all thanks to our tutoring and the 12-step plan which we teach. So first thing is, if you would like access to this presentation after the call, I'm going to need your name and your email address because I currently do not have any way of contacting you other than manually messaging you through LinkedIn. So I'm going to give you, I'm going to put this link in the chat. If you can give me your name and email address, by filling in this form. There you go, the link's in the chat. Name, first name, surname, email address. I will send you this presentation and a link to the recording of the call. And I'll also send you some freebies. I've got some other things I can send you as well. And that'll probably arrive to you tomorrow or Friday. So please go to the chat and enter the details. Anyway, firstly, I need to make sure that you know the basics. I don't want to go into the basics. I'm going to assume that your course provider has already told you the basics about how the NEBOSH exam works. Okay, so we're not in kindergarten here. I would expect you, oh, sorry, that's the wrong answer. Boys have a thing. This is the right answer. So it's a scenario-based exam. It's done online. It's open book. You've got 24 hours to do it, and you need 45% to pass. That's the basic stuff. I assume you already know that. I'm going to do some far more advanced teaching on this. So firstly, what I'm going to say is before we even get to the 12 steps, there's some prep work which needs to be done. And if you recognize this movie, this is Rocky IV. Rocky is training before he does the exam. Here's Rocky in the exam. But to be ready to do the exam, he has to put in a lot of legwork first. You have to get ready. So what is the prep work that you need to do? And again, this is basic stuff here. But here are some of the things that you should do. Is that first of all, you should have a target date, a deadline for the exam. Now, if you're in a classroom, then of course you will have a date set by your course provider. But if you're studying this online and you set your own date, then you're going to have to set a target date, something to work towards. Otherwise, you might procrastinate. You also have to make sure that you invest enough study time. So in a classroom, you would do about a week of study, full-time study, and then maybe an extra 1 or 2 days of personal study. In total, you want to be investing about 50 hours, somewhere between 40 to 50 hours as a general rule of thumb-ish. Some people need more, some people need less. You cannot pass this unless you put in the hours. When you're studying, you're not memorizing things. You want to make sure you have practical understanding. This is a scenario-based assessment, and so you will have a case study, and you'll be tested on your understanding of what's going on in the case study. So memorizing lists is not going to get you very far with this. You should be spending quite a bit of time, as you are now in this call, understanding how the exams work, how they're marked, and understanding the best possible technique. Now, if I were to go back some years when I first trained to be an examiner, they taught me that exam technique was 50% of the chances of success at the exam. Now, this was back in the day of the closed book exam, so the exam has changed and moved on, so that might be a little bit out of date, but I think it's still relevant to some extent. I'm not sure if it's a 50% chance of success anymore, but it's still very, very important. If you don't understand how the exam works or how to write the answers in a way which is likely to get marks, then you're going to struggle. So exam technique is crucial. Whilst you're doing your studying, make sure you use the resources at your disposal. So you've got, say, quizzes, you've got activities, you've got case studies, that kind of thing. Mark is just giving us a chat saying he thought it was national diploma. No, won't be touching a diploma in the slightest, Mark. Sorry about that. No, this is general certificate only. So yes, feel free to leave us. If your course provider is giving you access to mock exam questions and the ability to submit answers to tutors and get some feedback, then you really should do that. That's going to help you iron out any issues. And hopefully improve your technique. Now, I say that should help. That will only help if your tutor actually knows how to mark exam questions. It will only help if they've got some kind of marking scheme to compare your answer against. A lot of tutors out there, and apologies if you're one of them, this is not a criticism at all. It's just a fact. Lots of tutors out there do not actually understand the exam technique. They have not been an examiner ever, and therefore they are at a disadvantage. They do struggle to prepare their students for the examination. So you're more than welcome to learn from this call, of course. But if you're a student and that's your tutor, you have a disadvantage because, well, how are you going to practice your exam technique if your tutor can't give you the feedback that you need? That's a real problem for you. If you've got access to past papers, past exam questions, past scenarios, obviously go through those. And there's some other stuff as well. I mean, loads of little things we could go to for obvious common sense things like, have a good night's sleep the night before the exam. Make sure you get some breaks in there, eat well. Make sure you get your login details from NEBOSH before the exam so you can log on, that kind of thing. Clear the diary on the Wednesday and the Thursday of the exam, obviously. So those are kind of some of the basics. Anyway, let's get into the 12 steps. And firstly, I'd just like to talk about the number 12. The number 12 is a very special number. It's an ancient number with a lot of symbolism behind it. And people who deal in symbolism have noticed that the number 12 pops up in a lot of strange things, like 12 months. We've got the 12 signs of the zodiac. We've got the 12 labors of Hercules, 12 inches in a foot, 12 ounces in a pound, 12 months of the year. We've got 12 notes in an octave. If you're a guitarist or a pianist, you'll know that. 12 frets on a guitar before you hit the octave. You see it in movies as well, and you know I love a good movie. Han Solo did the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. There's a 12-foot high fence in Jurassic Park for the T-Rex. We've got Bilbo Baggins and the 12 Dwarfs. And most importantly, we had Jesus Christ and the 12 Apostles as well. The number 12 crops up, and it's delivered great success for us with this 12-step plan. Now, bit of advice for you. No matter what happens on exam day, stick to the plan. On exam day, you're going to get hit with some questions. There's a tendency to freak out, to panic, to get rabbit in the headlights type situation. Right. Don't panic. Stay calm. Stick to the plan. If you stick to the plan that I'm going to explain tonight, you should, in theory, pick up enough marks to pass. You might not be a brilliant pass, but it should be a pass. Okay. If you don't follow the plan, if you panic and veer off, then obviously you're going to drop some marks. So just stick to the plan, have faith in the plan, pick up marks along the way. I can see some people have joined us recently. So if you've just joined us recently, please note that if you want a copy of this recording, then you will need to enter your details in the chat. So when I say enter your details in the chat, don't just dump your email in the chat. If you dump your email in the chat, it will just get deleted and ignored. What we need you to do is, there you go, click on the link that's in the chat and fill in the form. That would do me a massive favor. Click on the link in the chat, fill in the form. I will not be copying and pasting email addresses. After this call, I will be going home. Fill in the form and you will get a recording, you'll get some freebies, you'll get and you'll get this presentation as well. Right, let's carry on. So what is the plan? This is the plan. These are the 12 steps. No need to take a picture. I'm going to send you this by email in a nice, beautiful PDF document, which you can print. So don't think you have to grab it now. It's not a secret. Fill in the form of your email. I'll send it to you tomorrow. These are the 12 steps we're going to go through. So firstly, we're going to read questions. Obviously, we're going to read the scenario. We are going to then choose the easiest question. And we're then going to decide how much time we're going to give this question. Managing time is important. I'll explain to you the formula of how to work out how much time to give it. Then we're going to read the question carefully and dissect it. Step 5 is one of the most important steps, and we're going to do an exercise on dissecting questions to understand what the questions mean. What are the questions asking for? And crucially, what are they not asking for? So step 5 is super important. So just wait for that. Step 6, we're then going to get into the scenario and we're going to use the scenario to help start to cobble together an answer. We're going to find points that we can make. We're going to find evidence that we can use in our answers. We're going to go through the scenario thoroughly. And then step 7, we're going to write an answer plan. And again, we're going to do an exercise on this all together. I'm going to give you a scenario and a question. I'm going to ask you to go through it and write an answer plan. And I'm going to tell you how to find the answers. Step 7, super important. Where do you find the answer? Well, there's a few different places you can look for your answers. Step 8 is super important again. We're going to take that answer plan and we're going to write a full answer using something called the P principle. And at the end of that, you should know what a real answer looks like. So if you're not sure how to write an exam answer for NEBOSH, NEBOSH styled and all of that, then at the end of that, you'll know, you'll see it. You'll have written one yourself and you'll watch me demonstrate it. So that's step 8, super important. After step 8, it's simply a case of repeating that step-by-step process for all of the questions, from the easiest question through to the hardest question. So we go around in a loop for a bit, back to step 3, all the way back through to step 8, back to step 3, but all the way through to step 8, again and again and again till we're finished. After that, we go to bed. We have a good long sleep. And the next day, we are then going to pick up our exam paper again. And after having slept, after reflecting on things, maybe you had a dream or something like that, you can maybe add a few comments here or there and fill in the form properly with your name, save it as a PDF, fill in the references, all of that real basic stuff. And then you'll submit your answer sheet onto the NEBOSH platform. And then you just relax and chill out. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. So firstly, what I like to do is I like to skip the scenario. That's the first thing I do. So you go onto the NEBOSH platform, you download the answer sheet and you download the exam paper, which has a scenario and the questions, and I skip the scenario. I just go straight to the questions. But we have a problem here, and the problem is Jim Carrey's face. He looks horrified. He looks shocked. Right, we don't want that. We don't want that. The key thing here is do not panic. Stay calm. Your little heart will be beating, I'm sure. Stay calm. Just look at the questions. you should expect some questions to be quite tricky. Let's see if we can have a look at some questions here. So this is the NEBOSH sample NG1 paper on their website. This is nothing confidential. You can see it's a sample on there. I just skip straight past the scenario and I just go straight to the questions because I want to see what's waiting for me. And I know that there's going to be at least one question that I'm going to hate. So I'm prepared mentally for that. And when I see it, I just kind of shrug and go, there it is. And some questions might seem easier. So let's just have a quick look at these. So we've got one here. It's about moral arguments. Okay, right. So we've got moral stuff to cover. We've got one here on what arguments can we give to convince the committee on how to investigate near misses. It's a 10-mark question. Okay, that doesn't seem too bad, but it doesn't seem too easy either. This one's just a bit weird. What's that? I've got a whole policy in there, or a bullet pointed policy. It's not a very good policy. And I've got this bit here.
See the screen.
All right. Can you not see that screen there? Right. Let's try again then. Thank you for letting me know. It's a screen too. That should be on the screen there. Let's try again. Thank you. So I'm looking at these questions here. I'm just going through the questions just to kind of see what's waiting for me. And what I notice here is that, oh, I've got a great question there. That's a question that me personally, I really like this question. So I'm very happy to see that. And so it's not all bad. There'll be some good questions that you like as well. And that's a nice big 15 marker. And again, don't panic when you see a 15 marker, because if it's a 15 or 20 or even a 25 mark question, which might seem very big, very scary, hang on, we can literally just go through this scenario and we can spot in here the indicators of a negative health and safety culture. An easy question with lots of marks is a very, very good thing. So we're just trying to get a feel for what is waiting for us. Which questions seem easy? Which questions seem hard? What topics are being covered? And do we recognize any questions? It's entirely possible that you have done some of these questions. For example, on the Compassa course for our students, they do a question like this on culture. Comment on the current health and safety culture. They do that question on a different scenario, but they know how to approach that particular question. They also do this question. And so they know how to approach that very peculiar one. So step one, we skip the scenario, go straight to the questions. Now, step two, having looked at the questions, we're now going to look through our scenario. And I would read it a couple of times at least. Maybe read it quite quickly the first time just to get an idea, just skim through it, see what's going on, and then read it thoroughly and slowly. And one of the things I want to point out is this, is that every sentence in this scenario is there for a reason. NEBOSH, they do everything for a reason. So if they've inserted a sentence, that sentence is there to help you answer a question. It's there to help you maybe infer something from the scenario, which you can then use as an answer. Or it's there as an example of something going wrong and you can use that as an answer. But either way, every single thing is there for a reason. In theory, you could almost cross bits out in the scenario as you refer to them, as you use them, and at the end of your exam, everything should be crossed out. NEBOSH go through a whole process of writing exam papers. If there's a sentence or a word in the scenario which is not needed to answer the questions, it just gets deleted. It's irrelevant. They are not there to trick you. They are not there to try to send you off on a wild goose chase in a strange direction. There are no traps in this. They try and make things as clear and as easy as they can. So read the scenario carefully, at least a couple of times. And at this point, I would do one of two things. You decide which one you want to do. If you've got a printer, you could print out the scenario and print it as many times as you have questions. So on this particular scenario, we have 5 questions. It's only half of an exam paper in fairness, but let's say you've got 5 questions. I would print this out 5 times. And I'm going to tell you why a little bit later, but it's essentially we're going to make notes on this. You don't have to print it out if you don't want to. You could copy it into a Word document. And recently, in the past, I think 6 months, 9 months or something, it's been possible to copy and paste the scenario into another document. So they used to be locked, but recently NEBOSH have unlocked these documents and they can now be copied and pasted into a Word document. So that might be an easier way of doing it. Just copy and paste it. Step 3, now I would like you to choose the easiest question. And I can't tell you what question is easiest because this is a matter of opinion. Me personally, when I look at this, I quite like this question. That's quite an easy one for me. And then I would probably go for question 1. That would be my second easiest. And then this one would be my third easiest. I would probably leave this one to last personally, but this is your decision. You decide which one do you feel most comfortable with. If you were having a workout in a gym and you had a load of different weights in front of you, I would be telling you, pick up the easiest weight, the lightest weight, this one over here. Do that one first. Right, why? Why do the easiest one first? Well, a few different reasons. Firstly, you are worried. You are nervous. You've got a bit of anxiety, which is normal. Boost your confidence by answering an easy question first. Because what will happen is you will see that you have on your answer sheet quite a good answer, quite a long answer. You will have found it easy to write down points and a whole list of points and some nice explanations. And you'll be very confident that your answer's quite good. Maybe not perfect, but quite good. And at the end of that, now that your brain is warmed up, your fingers are warmed up, now you can see you've got a nice big answer and you're very confident that it's a good answer. And now you're feeling better. You're feeling more confident. And that confidence is very important, my friends, because as you progress through the exam, you're going to do harder and harder and harder questions. And if you're not confident in trying to answer that question, you might start to freeze, start to panic, your mind goes blank, and then you don't perform very well. So start with an easy one. Prove to yourself you can do this. You can produce some good work. And then hopefully you'll do better on the following questions. So this is about warming up your brain, getting a bit of a confidence boost. But here's a crucial point. I just want to make this really clear, is that you do want to put in maximum effort on this easy question. Maximum effort, because these easy questions, you want to get maximum marks. If you've got a 10, 15, 20 mark easy question that you really like, you can almost pass, well, not quite pass the whole exam, but you can pass a lot of the exam just on the back of one question. Just imagine, look at this one here. Look at this tiny little baby weight this guy's got here. Tiny little baby weight. Anyone can pick up that. Imagine that's an easy exam question, and imagine it's worth 20 marks. Well, wouldn't that be glorious? If you can get a full 20 marks, or let's say 18 marks, 17 marks, if you can get lots and lots of marks on this one easy question, you have nearly passed the exam. All you need is another 20. Another 20 and you're done nearly. Another 20 or 25, something like that. And you're done. You're through this exam. And that's quite easy from the rest of the questions. Step 4, you're going to set a time limit. You do have 24 hours to submit this exam paper. But you don't really have 24 hours, do you? Because you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to go to the toilet, you might have work, you might have family. So you've actually got a limited amount of time to do this. Now, there is a little bit of maths here in working out how long you have. So a little bit of maths. This is how it works. Firstly, you have to decide how many hours you have in total to do it. So let's say you are starting at 11 o'clock in the morning and you have booked all of Wednesday off and you've got until, say, 8 o'clock in the evening. So that's 9 hours. But you do have to eat, you do have to take a break, you do have to go to the toilet, that kind of thing. So maybe it's not 9 hours, maybe it's 8 hours. So what you then do is you take your 8 hours and you multiply that by 60 minutes. That gives you the total number of minutes that you have to do your exam and to answer all of the questions. You then take the number of minutes that you have and you divide that by 100. Why 100? Because there are 100 marks in the exam. And now you have the number of minutes that you have for every mark. Then you take your question, and let's say your question has 10 marks. You then multiply the number of minutes you have per mark by the number of marks there are in the question, and that will tell you how long you have for this question. Let's run through an example of that. You have decided that you have 8 hours of free time. You take 8, you multiply it by 60. That's 480 minutes in total to do the full exam paper. You divide 480 by 100, and that gives you 4.8 minutes per mark, or something like, boy, what was that? There's that 4 minutes, 50 seconds, something like that. Let's say you've got a 20-mark question. So you take 4.8 minutes, multiply it by 20, you now have 96 minutes to answer this question. And at that point, my friend, you go get your smartphone, you set the timer to 96 minutes, and off you go. And when that timer rings, what I would like you to do is just stop. Just stop. The timer rings, stop. Move on to the next question. If you have some free time tomorrow, so on the Thursday before you submit, you can always go back to that question and give it a little bit of extra time if you haven't finished. But it's very important that you answer all of the questions, because if there's a question that you do not answer, you've lost all of those marks. And let's say there's a 10-mark question that you don't answer. You have to get 45 marks. Trying to get 45 marks out of 100 is difficult enough. Trying to get 45 marks out of 90, that's even harder. That's why we have to answer all of the questions and give each one its best effort. So set a timer, and when the timer rings, move on to the next question. Right, so that's the preliminary stuff. That is steps 1 through 4. Now we're going to get into the really meaty, juicy stuff. So here we are going to read the question very, very carefully. And if you're a NEBOSH tutor, well, you may look at your students smugly sometimes. This is a smug NEBOSH tutor. There you are. NEBOSH tutors have a sense of humor, some of them, and they've got an acronym. The acronym they like to use on students is RTFQ, which politely stands for read the question. I won't say what the F stands for. You can work that out for yourself. So read the question. Now, when I say read the question, I mean read the question. We're going to take every single word in that question. We're going to dissect the question. We're going to chop it up into little pieces. And we're going to examine each word and ask ourselves, what does this word mean? Why is this word here? What is it directing us towards? Every single word in the question matters. And it's just like the scenarios. NEBOSH have a whole process of how they write questions. They get reviewed by multiple people. They try very hard to write the clearest question in the simplest, plainest kind of language. And over time, they've gotten better and better and better at it. So if you look at some old exam papers, you might say, okay, I don't understand that question. Okay, fair enough. But in the process of continual improvement, that question has been rephrased and rephrased and rephrased over time to make it very, very clear. Now, it's not always 100% clear to everybody all of the time. It's impossible to be clear to everybody all the time, but they have a whole process. If there's a word in that question, it's because they have decided that that word is necessary to point you towards what you need. So, pay attention to the signposts. There are things in that question pointing you towards something or away from something. Pay attention to the signposts. Stay on the road and keep off the moors. So there's nothing good in the moors. So here's a question. Task 1, got a question, got some marks, we've got a stem. So let's break it down. Firstly, that's a title. The title is important. Now, the title is not the question, but the title is important because it is actually pointing you towards the part of the syllabus which this question is testing. That's super useful because it actually tells you where in your course materials you might want to go have a look for things. Next, we have the question. We'll have a look at that in a moment. Then we have the number of marks. That's super important as well, because that gives us an idea as to how long of an answer we're going to have to write here. Then we have the stem. So let's have a look at all of these elements one by one. Firstly, here's the title. Now, I just said the title is super important because it's directing you towards a particular section of the syllabus. It helps you go to where you have this information in your course materials. So, for example, if you were answering this question, and if you were a Compassa student, or if you've got our Compassa study book, you would go to the section on managing contractors. There it is, you've got the title there. You've got a bit of a slide there on the key points, and you've got a whole load of text with bits in bold telling you the key things that we have to do to manage contractors really well. Now, that's not the answer to your question, but it is telling you how contractors should be managed. And that's going to be kind of important, isn't it, when you're having to comment on how well a contractor was managed. How well were they managed? Well, did we do these things here? We did this, we didn't do that. We did this, but we didn't do that. Yeah, it's that's kind of the way you might approach this. So the title's important. Then we've got the number of marks. Now, the number of marks is super important because this tells us how many correct technical points we need to make to get full marks. So in this question, this is a comment question. It's telling us how many correct comments we can make to get full marks. We need to make 10 correct technical points, and they have to be clearly demonstrated in order to get the full marks here. Now, you're not limited to 10. You're not limited to 10. There are always more points on the marking scheme than there are marks available. Let me say that again. There are more points on the marking scheme than there are marks available in the question. So if you've got a 10-mark question, depending on the marking scheme, you could have 15 to 25 points on the marking scheme, which means the examiner's got like a lot of things that they can give you marks for if you were to mention it. Now, a lot of students, one of their big mistakes that they make is they see a 10-mark question, they say 10 things, and only 10 things. But then the problem is, not all of those 10 things are correct. Some are just not on the marking scheme. Some are poorly explained. Some don't have enough information in them to get the mark. So they might only get, say, 3 right or 4 right. Ah, okay, so you gave 10 answers, you got 4 right. You got 4 marks. That's not good. You don't pass with 4 marks. But what if you wrote 15 points, 16 points, 17 points? And what if of those, say, 15, what if 6 are right, or 7 are right, or even 8 are right? Now, all of a sudden, you're doing better. You're doing much, much better. And you've got far more chances of getting the full marks. So the number of marks is super important because it gives you an idea as to how many points you need to write. And you can and you should give more answers than there are marks available. Okay, so just a reminder for those of you who are putting your emails in the chat, I'm very grateful that you're so keen on getting the information, the presentation, all of that. But please do not put your email in the chat. I will not be sending you any emails if you put it in the chat. Please fill in the form to collect the emails. So I've got them in a nice list. So click on the link in the chat, fill in the form with your name and email address, and I will send you all of this. I'll send you the presentation, I'll send you the recording, I will send you some extra free stuff as well. I'll send you the 12 steps, summarize. There's loads of stuff I can give you, but please fill in the form. Don't just dump your email in the chat. So moving on. So for example, 15-mark question, 10-mark question, you would give 15 answers. Now we've got the stem, and so in this case it said, note you should support your answer using relevant information from the scenario. So that is called a stem. There are different kinds of stem. This is the most common type of stem. It's the one you see most of the time. Stems give us crucial information on a couple of different things. Firstly, they can tell us how we might interpret the question. So stems sometimes point us towards something in our answer, or maybe it points us away from a mistake that NEBOSH wants us to avoid. And sometimes, like in this case, they tell us what we should include in the answer. And notice what it's saying. It's saying we should include relevant information from the scenario to support our answer. And you ignore that at your peril. Because if your answer does not have the relevant information from the scenario, you will be getting a big fat nul point. You will be getting a big fat nul point, 0 marks, if you do not have relevant information from the scenario where it is needed. Now, you might get a mark here or there, maybe, depending on the marking scheme, but the STEM is clearly pointing you towards giving information from the scenario. What it means is that your answer cannot just be generic information. You cannot just go to, say, the study book. Have I got a copy of our study book here? There's our study book. You can't just say copy. Let me find a nice part of our study book here. Let's say you've got a question on the costs of accidents, okay? So there we are, the uninsured costs of accidents. You've got a question asking what the uninsured costs of accidents are. You can't just copy and paste all this and dump it in your answer. Firstly, that is cheating, and that could get you banned from doing the assessment. But secondly, none of that is specific to our scenario. Our scenario, right? Our question is saying use information from the scenario. So we're going to have to link that information to the scenario. We're going to have to discuss how that information relates to the scenario. In other words, my friends, this is not about you copying knowledge. It's not about copying information. This is about demonstrating understanding of how the theory in the course materials, now these are our course materials, you might have your own course materials, that's great, but you have to demonstrate your understanding of how this theory applies in practice. So at the very least, what you want to do is phrase your answers in the context of the scenario. So what does that mean? It means, well, it means if you're answering a question on a construction scenario, say, so let's go back to our sample here. This sample is about a construction company. Okay, so instead of talking about the organization, talk about the construction company. Just a simple change of language helps. That's a start, isn't it? Instead of talking about the manager, maybe you would talk about the contracts manager. Maybe instead of talking about the workers, you could talk about construction workers. Or instead of talking, you could talk about operations manager. Just use the language which is in the scenario. Straight away, that's going to help kind of make a link between your generic answer and the scenario. That's not perfect by itself, but it is certainly better than nothing. So here's another example of a question, different question. Using the general hierarchy of control as a framework, comment on how the risk of falls during this maintenance activity can be minimized. And then we've got a STEM, and the STEM is note you must correspond risk minimization with the general elements of the hierarchy of control. Now, that might not be 100% clear, but what NEBOSH are trying to do there, they're trying to point you towards something. Straight away, they've got a hierarchy of control mentioned there, and then they're mentioning it again here, and they're saying correspond. You've got to correspond risk minimization to what? To the general elements of the hierarchy of control. So what that means is you've got to link the risk controls to the elements of the hierarchy. For example, things like eliminate, substitution, engineering controls. So you're trying to explain how we could reduce the risks of the maintenance activity, and you're discussing it using the hierarchy of controls as a framework. So we could eliminate the risk of falls by doing it this way. We could substitute the work at height hazard for this other system or control measure. We could substitute the use of fall restraint lanyards for a guardrail. It's that kind of thing. And they're saying, right, use the hierarchy as a structure for your answer. So you might put all of the eliminate options in the eliminate section. You might then have a section on engineering controls, and you put all your engineering controls in there, and you put all your PPE controls at the very end. So they're asking you to link your answers to the hierarchy of controls. And by the way, just to be clear, your NG1 exam is not testing you on NG2 stuff. It's an NG1 exam. It's not an NG2 exam. So you're not being tested on your knowledge of work at height and work at height controls. No. Now, it might be useful for you to have a quick look at the NG2 course materials, maybe, to see how do we minimize the risks of falls, maybe. But the question is not testing you on that. It's testing you on your knowledge and understanding of the hierarchy of controls, because that is an NG1 topic. Do you understand what eliminating looks like? Do you understand what substitution looks like? What engineering and administrative controls and PPE looks like? Can you put the right control in the right part of the hierarchy? That's what they're testing you on there. And that STEM is trying to point you towards that. Let's have a look at this question here. Let's dissect this question word for word. And let me just see if I got a, let me just very quickly, if I can get a web browser up on the screen. There we are, get our friend Firefox up on the screen. There we are. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually just going to Google some words in here. So firstly, we've got the word comment. Well, what does the word comment mean? Now, it's an important question because some of you, first of all, do not speak English as a native language. So sometimes it's useful to use a dictionary. But even us native English speakers might struggle with this one. For example, there you've got the word correspond. And some people are going to struggle to understand what the word correspond means. Well, no problem. Look it up in a dictionary. Just look it up in a dictionary. That's all. So if I go to my good friend, the dictionary here, and I hope you can see this on the screen. But if I were to say correspond, meaning. That's all I need to do, correspond, meaning. And so it says, have a close similarity, match. Ah, match. That's it, all right. So it's asking me to match the risk minimization with the general elements of the hierarchy. Can I match a guardrail with engineering controls? Can I match a fall restraint lanyard with PPE? Can I match training with administrative procedures? Can I match it? Now, if we go back to our question here, comment, what does comment mean? Well, let's just look it up. I just go on here, comment. A verbal or written remark expressing an opinion or reaction. So what's your opinion? Okay, opinion. That's what it's asking for. What's your opinion? Give me your opinions, make opinions, write opinions on how effectively, what does how mean? Okay, let's look at how. How. I mean, some of you might think this is stupid, but I really would like you to go do your exam like this. How? In what way? In what manner? By what means? Okay. So what happened? The process, the mechanism, in what way? In what way was the contractor effectively managed? Effectively. What does effectively mean? Effective. Effective. Effectively. Effectively. In such a manner to achieve a desired result. Actually, not officially, not explicitly. Now, not all of the definitions will work because we can use the same word in different ways. But effective. Effectively, effective, desired, intended result. Okay. Right. Well, what it means is how well was it? How well was the contractor managed? Was it good? Was it bad? Did it work? Did the management of contractor work? Was it effective? Did it achieve the intended result? So it's give your opinions in what way the contractor was managed. Did it achieve the desired result? Can you see what they're pointing you towards here? Contractor, well, that's pointing you towards answers on the contractor. It's not asking about workers. It's not asking about how workers were managed or how the managers were managed by the owner. It's not asking about anybody else. It's asking about the contractor. And it's worth noting we've got a the. The is like it's one contractor. There is no S. It's not saying contractors. In this scenario, we have a contractor who is, say, injured maybe, and it's asking about this one contractor and nobody else. And what that means is that if you start to write answers talking about other stuff, about the workers were not inducted or the workers did this and the manager did that to this colleague and there's an apprentice who, yeah, none of that matters. All of that, none of that is on the marking scheme. On the marking scheme, we have stuff relating to the contractor only. So that's super important. Then we have the word managed. It's not about being vetted or selected. That's a completely different part. The syllabus, if we go to our course materials, which we've got up here, there we are, our course materials, we've got a section on managing contractors. And what you'll see in that section, just like your course material, I suspect your course materials are very, very similar on this. But in your course materials, you'll have a whole bit about the selection of contractors. Like checking their risk assessments, checking their qualifications, have they got experience, all that kind of stuff. None of that matters here, because the question is not asking about the selection. The question is asking about how was the contractor managed in the factory, and only things related to how they were managed in the factory are on the marking scheme. And notice it says in the factory. It's not before they got to the factory. This is not about the planning process before the job took place. It's none of that. It's like they arrived in the factory. So they walked in the door, and from that point on, how well were they managed? See how it works? We're chopping the question up one by one so we know what's included and what's not included. It's different with this type of question. Same question, really, but with some crucial differences. It doesn't say comment, it says explain. Not a huge difference there. Explain means make clear. Okay, make clear how, mechanism, the process, what happens, in what way. Make clear in what way the contractor, and nobody else, was poorly managed. Now we have a crucial difference. It's asking for the negatives. What was bad about the management of this contractor? Now, you could say, oh, the contractor was signed in and that was good. Well, great. That's not going to get you a mark. They will not get a mark on that question. It will get you a mark on this question, because this question doesn't say poorly. It doesn't say well. It doesn't say good. It just says, how was the contractor, or how well were they managed? Well, you could say, well, really well, not very well, or a mixture of the two. Both good and bad are allowed on this. But on this next one, it's only the bad. Managed, again, not selected, not vetted while working in the factory. So some similarities, but a crucial difference. This focuses on the negative. Now, if you can't remember how contractors should be managed, because maybe you read that and you're like, I have no idea. I literally have no idea what's good or bad here. How should a contractor be managed? Well, at that point, go to your course materials. Your course materials should tell you how a contractor should be managed. And so here, what we've got, we've got some examples. For example, we've got inducting the contractor. That's a good thing. Signing in and out, having a point of contact. The prep work might be a little bit out of scope because that's before they arrive on site. So we'll put a cross through that. But maybe when they arrive, you might have a pre-start meeting. You go to the location, you discuss the job. You might have some ongoing meetings. You might want to make sure that you control their access to the work area, make sure they can't just walk around, give them some storage, waste facilities. You might need to authorize them to start, maybe even have a permit to work. You might want to inspect their work area, do some monitoring, some supervision, that kind of thing. So that's how a contractor should be managed. Can you now read the scenario to see which of those things they did and which of those things they did not do? So you're comparing the scenario to your course materials effectively, and you're trying to spot in the scenario how the theory was applied in practice. So that's read the question. Now, if at any point you have a question for me, drop it into the chat. Just drop a question into the chat. Hopefully I'll spot it, and I'll either answer it straight away if it's relevant, or I will answer it at some point later when it comes up. So let's now move on to the next part. Now that we've read the question, we've dissected it, what we want to do is we want to go back to our scenario. We're going to read the scenario with this question in mind. And notice now that we are highlighting things. So I said earlier, print it out if you like pens and paper, and you can use a highlighter or a pen to highlight the relevant parts of the scenario. You don't have to do it that way. You can also just copy and paste it into a Word document. If the paper allows you to copy and paste, then just highlight everything, copy, paste into a Word document, and you can use the highlight function on a Word document. And if you don't know what the highlight function is, it's that little thing there. Use that, But you can underline, you can put it in bold, you can do anything you like. But what you're going to do is you're going to highlight the relevant parts for this particular question. And what you'll do with that is that, firstly, it's going to help you gather some evidence. So there might be some evidence, that relevant information to support your answer. It's going to help you see the evidence. And then you'll be able to refer back to it. But also, these things that you're highlighting may help you to infer points. You might have to infer. Now, when I use the word infer, what do I mean? Well, let's Google the word infer, shall we? What do we mean by the word infer? Infer means to deduce or conclude something from evidence and reasoning rather than from explicit statements. Now, this matters because NEBOSH, in their guidance on how to do the exam, they say very clearly that they don't write things in the scenario explicitly. So you can't just copy and paste the scenario and dump it in your answer. No, they ask you to infer things. As in, you're a little bit like Sherlock Holmes. You have to spot clues and then draw a conclusion from the clues that you've seen. So, for example, if in your scenario you have a manager who says, "Oh, we ain't got the budget for that," and then you might have, say, equipment which is poorly maintained, in disrepair, but like basic repairs have been done with sellotape, duct tape, but it hasn't been fixed properly. It's been fixed very cheaply. You could infer that the senior leadership are not investing money into health and safety. They're not making the resources, the financial resources available. It doesn't say that in a scenario, but you can infer it from what you've read. So you are having to infer things. That is about understanding. It's not about copying and pasting, literally just spotting things in the scenario. So you've got to copy things into a Word document or print it so that we can highlight things. And this is where I'm going to stop talking for a little bit and I would like you to practice. So time for a bit of practice. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop into the chat, I'm going to drop a Word document which has a question and a very short section of a scenario. This is not a real NEBOSH scenario. It's something we have created, but it's very similar to previous NEBOSH scenarios. It's a very similar type of question as well. The question is, based on the scenario only, comment on the factory's application of their permit to work system, 10 marks. And what I would like you to do is, first of all, read the question and dissect it. Make sure you understand what this question is after and what it is not after. Then after you've done that, read the scenario carefully and then highlight the relevant parts of the scenario. Highlight it in a color or in bold or whatever you want to do. So let me put this in the chat for you. Please give me a quick moment. This is not a quick process. So there's the example question. There we are. Dump that in there and send. Okay, so bang, that's there. So your chat should now be orange or flashing or something. Go into that. And if you double click on the Word document that's in there, you should be able to open it up, read the question very carefully and dissect it, read the scenario, and then highlight or underline or do it in bold, whatever you want to do, highlight the relevant parts in the scenario relevant to that question. I'm going to give you 10 to 15 minutes or so to do this exercise. I will pause the recording in the meantime, and I'll see you when you get back. So let us go back to our presentation. Where was I in my presentation? So I've skipped back a few steps. There we are. So that's what we have done. We're going to return to that shortly. So keep your work because we're going to go back to it. Because the next thing we have to do is write an answer plan. We need a plan. We're not going to write an answer yet. We're going to write an answer plan. We need a plan, and then we're going to execute the plan. This plan is going to start with some very short, numbered, bullet-pointed answers. So short, numbered, bullet-pointed answers. We're going to write a list, and the list is going to be numbered in bullet points. How do we find the things to put on the list? Well, we're going to research from 3 different sources. So where are our sources? 3 sources. Firstly, you can research from your course materials. So some questions can be very easily answered straight from the course materials, almost. Like the list is there, you just have to use it. Now, not all questions are as easy as that, unfortunately, but some questions can be answered very easily like that. You can also use relevant information from the scenario. So you do what we just did here. Go through the scenario, pick bits. And sometimes it will be that plus that is going to be your answer. Information from the course materials linked to stuff that's going on in the scenario. From there, you cobble together an answer plan. There is a third place you can go to if you want to, and that is the internet and guidance. So you can go use your good friend Google, use the HSE website and various other recognized websites. You could use blog posts and articles as well if you wanted to. Obviously they're less recognized, maybe less useful. Now, I keep showing you this study book, by the way. Now, if you are a Compassa student, you've got this. Don't buy it. You can download it from the e-learning platform. It's included in your course. If you're not a Compassa student and if your course materials are, if you're not happy with your course materials, if you think they're a bit lacking, then perhaps consider downloading ours. You can go to our website and you can download the study book. We do have this is good timing. We do have a sale on at the moment if you wanted to take advantage of that. If you use the code 12parsecs at the checkout, you'll get 20% off. That is time limited. So as of 1st of July, it'll go back up to the normal price of that much. So if you wanted these, you can have them. There are other resources as well. We've got exam technique guides for NG1 and NG2. We've got the NG2 study book. You can buy it as a bundle as well. There's loads of stuff there, along with the rescue pack. I'll tell you about the rescue pack later. Anyway, back to our smug NEBOSH tutor. Smiling at you. We've got another acronym. The last acronym was RTFQ, read the question. Now we've got an ATFQ, which stands for answer the question. Answer the question. So you've read it, now give an answer which is linked to the question. Now, key thing here, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. If the point you are making is not on the marking scheme, it will not get a mark. It does not matter if you think it's right. The examiner is not allowed to award marks for things that are not on the marking scheme. Now, pretty much everything that is correct is going to be on that marking scheme. NEBOSH have a whole team of people putting together the questions. So if it's correct, it's going to be on the marking scheme. The key thing here is that you've read the question, understood it. Now make sure your answers actually do answer that question and not a different question. So let's have a look at this as an example. Got a title, determining the root causes of the accident. You try to inform the director that the root causes of unsafe behavior are usually management failures, 10 marks. So can we see there's a bit of a clue there? I mean, like root causes. Can you see what they're signposting you towards? Management failures. Okay. And moving on from there, based on the scenario only, what management failures are likely to have contributed to this accident? So it is another based on the scenario only question. So what management failures? So it's basically it's after the root causes. What are likely? Likely, that means could, likely, are reasonably foreseeable. Not did, not certainly. It's likely to have contributed. So that's played a part. Directly, indirectly, played a part to this accident. Not a different accident, not past accidents, not a near miss. Not management failures which lead to unsafe behavior. No. It's like what management failures led to this accident and no other accident. So we dissect the question. This is what I call a BOTSO question. BOTSO stands for based on the scenario only. They are very, very common questions. And BOTSO questions must be based on the scenario only, obviously, because that's what it stands for. What this means is that your course materials and the internet will be useful, but they will not have the exact answer you need. They can only serve as a revision guide on the topic of the question. So if you had this question on root causes, we've got a whole section on root causes in our course materials. And here we've got a load of examples, but these examples might not be the exact root causes that occurred in this scenario. This scenario might be very particular. And so what you're going to have to do is apply your understanding of what a root cause is And you're going to have to recognize in the question, in the scenario, the exact root causes you need to talk about. So just to be absolutely clear, when course materials cannot possibly have the answer to every single question when you've got an infinite number of scenarios. So how do you approach a BOTSO question then? Well, here's the question. Firstly, what you would do is you might want to have a look at the course materials just to remind yourself, what on earth is a root cause? What is a root cause? Right, so revise that. Hopefully that's now clear. Maybe if you have to, you go to Google and because maybe your course materials aren't very clear on this. I don't know which provider you're with, so maybe your course materials aren't great. So go to Google, look at root causes of accidents, examples of root causes of accidents. Maybe Google management failures that contribute to accidents. See if you can find some lists to try and understand what is it getting at. And hopefully, if you've understood what that is, you then go through the scenario and find the relevant root causes. And here is what I came up with. This, my dear friends, is an answer plan. Notice we have a list of fairly short answers. They are short answers, aren't they? Very short. They are bullet pointed and they are numbered. The benefits of using a numbering system is that it stops you from having to count how many answers you've given. I can see we have here 14 answers and no more. I can see someone is asking for a recording of things at the end of the session. Yes, of course, you can have a recording. Absolutely no problem. I'm going to drop, again, the link to the sign-up form. In the chat, there is a link to a sign-up form. Please click on that and fill in your details, and you can have the presentation and the recording and a few other things as well, free of charge. So please just give me your email, and yeah, in the next day or two, I'll send you all of that. So back to this, the numbering system. Notice it's a 10-mark question, but I haven't given 10 answers. I've given 14. As I said earlier, I've given more answers than there are marks available because I'm not convinced that all of these will get marks. Now, they should, I think. I'm pretty good at this, but I'm not telepathic. I do not know what the marking scheme is. For all I know, maybe that's not on the marking scheme. Or maybe that answer is too close to another answer. Maybe it's too similar to answer number 3, and the examiner might think, well, I can't give a mark for that. For all I know, like half of them might not get a mark because they're too similar. So straight away, I'm not getting my full 10 marks. But if I give extra points, I might get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 6 or 7 marks instead of the 3 or 4, which I would have gotten had I only given 10 answers. So give more than is required. And so this is where we're going to practice again. So what I would like you to do is, using the work that we did before, and just for the benefit of the 1 or 2 people who joined recently, I'm going to put the document back into that chat. But for the rest of you, use your current work so far. On the last exercise, what we did was we highlighted the relevant parts of the scenario. Now what I'd like you to do is write an answer plan for this question. See if you can come up with a list of bullet points. Can you come up with 15 things? 15. Now, to be clear, they have to be unique points. Unique. If they're the same thing 3 or 4 times, there's only 1 mark available. They have to be unique. So don't repeat yourself. Try not to repeat yourself. So if they're super closely related, they might not get 2 marks. Might just be 1. Try and come up with 15 separate things. Again, you can refer to your course materials if you want to. You can refer to the highlights that you had in your scenario. Get me a list of 15 bullet points. If not 15, can you get 5, 8, 10, 12, 20 even? Anyway, I'm going to give you 10 to 15 minutes in order to do that exercise. I'm going to stop the recording now. Now, I know some of you are going to ask this at some point. Is like, what about the word count? Okay. Well, firstly, your NEBOSH examiner is not the vampire from Sesame Street, and they're not going to be counting your words one by one, okay? That's not how it works. This is what your exam instructions will say, hopefully. Now, if it doesn't say this on the day, then all bets are off. But at the moment, every single exam paper since NG1 launched says you are not expected to write more than 3,000 words in total. Not expected to dissect that like you would a question. What it means is it implies that the word count can be exceeded. It is not forbidding you from doing it. It doesn't say you must not. If it said you must not, that would be very clear advice to not do it. It doesn't say that. It says you are not expected to. It's setting an expectation of length. It's saying, hey, guys and gals, all you need to do is write around about 3,000 words. That's all you need. If you do things properly and you focus on answering the questions correctly and concisely, that's all you need to pass. Most of those people are writing more than 3,000 words. So that's all I'll say on that matter. Do not feel too restricted by the word count. So just to be clear though, because I don't want anyone to take me out of context on this, does this mean I can write as much as I like, even if it's probably wrong? Like, no. Do not go start dumping down a load of useless, irrelevant information. Write what you think should be correct. There are no marks for dumping irrelevant information in your paper. You will waste your time, and you will, very importantly, you will annoy the examiner. Now, the examiner should still mark you fairly regardless, but it's always best to not annoy the examiner. Eh? It's not helpful, is it? So let's not do that. Right. And just to be clear, Darth Vader will get you if you write 8,000 words of pure waffle. If you write 8,000 words of pure waffle, you make it very difficult for the examiner to spot the mark-worthy points you have made. You hide the good bits in the midst of a load of bad bits. So let's not do that. Anyway, this is, say, an answer plan. That will not get marks. The answer plan by itself will not get you marks, or it's highly unlikely to get you marks because, again, going back to your exam instructions, it says a mark is given for each correct technical point that is clearly demonstrated there. Avoid writing too little, as this will make it difficult for the examiner to award marks. Single word answers or lists are unlikely, not guaranteed, but they're unlikely to gain marks, as this will not normally be enough to show understanding or a connection with the scenario. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to demonstrate understanding, and you can't do that with a list or a single or too short of an answer. And you have to demonstrate a connection with the scenario. You have to take your generic knowledge, generic information, link it to the scenario. What it requires is for you to make points and then explain your point and support that explanation with some evidence from the scenario. And that is what we call the P principle, which we're going to talk about in a moment. So that is our current answer plan. That's just a list. It doesn't demonstrate any understanding. It's got very limited connection to the scenario. So what we're going to do is going to go to step 8. We're going to P principle, P-E-E. P stands for point, evidence, and explanation. This used to be recommended by NEBOSH in previous guidance. They've removed the references to it now, but it's still valid. It's still useful. I've spoken to them about this, and they say, yes, students can still and should still use the P principle. It's a great technique. So these are just the points. They are shorthand abbreviated points. What we're going to do is now we're going to explain those points more fully. And we're going to explain using evidence or what we call relevant information from the scenario. And we're aiming, as a rule of thumb, we're aiming for 2 to 3 lines per point. That's all, 2 to 3 lines for each of these points. So now, just to be clear, again, your exam instructions say, in general, 1 mark is given for for each correct technical point clearly demonstrated. What it means is, most of the time, you will get 1 mark for each point made, provided that that point is on the marking scheme, and provided you have clearly demonstrated that point by explaining it and supporting it with evidence. So if I can explain all of these with some evidence, and provided they're all on the marking scheme, I should get top marks. Now, it is possible, depending on the marking scheme, for you to get some bonus marks. Extra marks for mentioning relevant evidence, key bits of evidence along the way. You might get some extra marks. So it's useful to use evidence from scenario and mention it. Now, just a word of caution on this. Don't go copying and pasting the scenario into your answer. There are no marks for copying and pasting the scenario. Examiners will find it difficult to award a mark if you've started just copying and pasting stuff. Rephrase things. Tell us in your own words what's happening in the scenario. You don't have to use the exact words or anything, yeah? But if you just mention stuff along the way, and it's on the marking scheme, the examiner may be able to give you some bonus marks. And that's super useful. So this is before the explanation, and that's after the explanation. Now, just a word of caution. I've only answered the first 5 points there. I've only answered the first 5, just because it's too big to fit on the screen. But I would repeat that for every point. I've only answered the first 5 points there. I've taken those first 5 and I've thrashed it out. I want to do that on all of them. And, well, can you see how much I've written? There's 2, 3, maybe 4 lines at a push. And notice that we've got the points. Those are the points that we've made. Notice that we've added a bit of explanation. So the task was not properly risk assessed. My explanation is, this meant the risk of the machine turning on during a repair was not identified. My evidence is, the existing risk assessment only covered the use of the machine and not the fault finding or the maintenance. Second point is, the failure to provide the correct size tools to enable an easy repair is what led to the engineer needing to remove the back panel. Can you see how I'm mentioning what's going on in the scenario, using my own words? Had management provided the correct tools, he could have made the adjustment from the front panel. There's my explanation. And that's what we're aiming for. That's what a good answer looks like. And I will repeat that for all of the points I've written on my list, for all of these. That's the basic structure. I want you to phrase your point quite clearly, making sure that that answers the question. And you will explain that point in a little bit of further depth, and you will use the scenario along the way to support your answers. And that, my friends, will demonstrate lots of understanding and a great connection with the scenario. Now, all of this does take practice, and I'm conscious that we don't have time tonight for you to write out a full answer. It can take quite a while. So here's something you could do. Firstly, if you've got a course provider, and your course provider has mock exams and a tutor who's capable of marking them, use them, submit answers to them, get them to review your answers. Ask them about the P principle as well. Test them a little bit. See if they know their stuff. If you're not getting that kind of support from your course provider, or if you're not confident in your course provider, you could, if you wanted to, apply for what we call our rescue package. So our rescue package is essentially our full online NEBOSH course with me as your tutor. And you will get all the materials, all the video technology, all the case studies, all of the mock exam questions, all of the feedback, tutoring, monthly exam masterclasses. You get the whole lot, but instead of paying the full price, which is £459, you'll pay that much plus the VAT. And that we don't make much money on that at all. This is basically us rescuing you from other course providers. And really, all it is, I'm just hoping, I'm praying that once you pass, thanks to us, you will tell everyone about us. That's all. It's just marketing as far as I'm concerned. That you'll tell everyone, oh, I went with this company. They weren't great, weren't confident. Went with them on the rescue pack. They sorted me out. Just go there next time. That's all I'm hoping. So we charge a super low price to make it more comfortable for you. And then hopefully we'll get you through it. It's had really good reviews. Consider it, but if that's too much money for you, then no problem. I understand. Remember, you got loads of extra stuff on the website, which is very, very cheap, relatively speaking. The cheapest thing we've got is £13.99. So look at the range of things there. Notice we've got the sale again. And if you haven't got any money whatsoever, go to YouTube. We've got our YouTube channel has lots of free stuff. Right, just to be clear, we are not ticking boxes on this. We have had students answer questions like that. Students who think that they have to tell the examiner what the point is, what the evidence is, what the explanation is. No. We don't want to do that. That's silly. That's just silly. Just write it in a nice, simple 2 to 3 line paragraph. That's all. No need to do anything conceited like that. Anyway, question I often get is, do we really have to go that far? Do we really have to do this? Do we really have to write a full 2 to 3 lines for each? That's a lot of writing. Will, do we have to do that? Like, yeah, you do. Go back to what it says. You have to demonstrate an understanding and a connection with the scenario. This is a tough qualification. Yes, you do. You know, it's no accident that the pass rate is not very high. It shouldn't be very high. It's a tough qualification. If it was easy, everyone would have it and no one would want it. It's a tough qualification and it's a badge of honor to get this. So thankfully, 85% of our students do get it. Not everyone does, unfortunately, but you know, sometimes on the second attempt, they often do. It's like, you're going to have to put some effort in. Yeah, so yeah, you do have to do that. Now that brings us to step 9, which is essentially just go back to your next question, next easiest question, repeat the process, and then the next easiest, and the next easiest. You work all your way down to the hardest. And at that point, sleep, go to bed. You're going to need it. You're going to need it. You're going to be knackered. Now, just bear in mind that the last question you will have answered will be the hardest, and you will be at your most tired. Your answer is not going to be great. It's not going to be great. So don't submit it straight away. Don't submit straight away. Sleep on it. Get some rest. Wake up the next day. Hopefully you will book out your whole morning the next day, so you've got some extra time. And I would return to your paper. This is Groundhog Day. Yeah, you're back to your NEBOSH exam. It's not over. Sorry, kid. Go back to your answers. If you ran out of time, now is your chance to finish the answer. If you thought of a few extra things you could write, add those few extra things. Just to be clear, don't go deleting anything. Don't go deleting anything, because you might accidentally delete a load of mark-worthy stuff. Listen, you spent a lot of time writing it, just leave it. Just leave it now. Let the examiner decide if it's mark-worthy or not. But if you decide to, like, you've misinterpreted the question and you should have gone in that direction, just write more information after. The examiner will mark that bit and see if there are any marks. There might be some marks there. And then they'll write the bit underneath, and there might be some marks there as well. So don't delete anything at the end, even if you think it's terrible. So be it. Fill in the last few bits of information, the few last details. You have the name, the number, the word count. Again, don't worry too much about the word count. You're allowed. You know, the instructions say you're not expected to write more than 3,000 words, but you can. So just be truthful. Write down your word count. Write down the references and any sources of information. So if you use Google, if you use the HSC website, if you use your course providers, course materials, our course materials, just be truthful. Write down what you wrote, and that protects you if you have accidentally copied and pasted too much of it. You know, if you quoted, say, legislation, and you get detected by the software for copying and pasting stuff. Oh, look, that what he wrote is identical to what they wrote there. The examiner can see that you have referenced the HSC website or the legislation website, and they can say, no, come on, they're being honest. That is a copy and paste. They've said where they got it from. That's fine. So reference where you get your information from. Obviously, if you write down ChatGPT in the references, I would expect you just to be voided and banned. So do not use ChatGPT under any circumstances or any other AI. And at that point, don't make the mistake that one of my students made, which was to try and submit it at 5 minutes before the deadline, and their router crashed and they lost their internet and missed the deadline. That was not a good day for them. Make sure you submit it well before the deadline. You know, give it a good half an hour to an hour. Submit it onto the NEBOSH platform. If you don't know how to do that, NEBOSH have some fantastic videos on YouTube on how to submit it, or just ask your course provider how to do that. It's very, very easy. So to summarize that, then bring it to the end. One final tip. Make sure you save your document while you're doing this. You know, don't be that person whose computer crashes and they lose everything. Save, save, save all the way through. Follow the 12 steps. No matter what they throw at you, just follow the plan. Stick to the plan. You should pick up enough marks to pass. As long as I've got your email, as long as you've submitted your email to me using the form, then I'll send you this document tomorrow or Friday. Stick to the plan. This plan results in very high pass rates. It's not just the plan which results in the high pass rates, I think. It's also the video tutorials and the tutoring and the mock examination feedback and all the rest of it. But we have a lot of people, you know, as much as I'm trying to sell our materials in this call, like, we have a lot of people who buy nothing from us and just use the YouTube channel and these 12 steps. And you just check out our YouTube comments. You will see people saying, hey, I didn't study with you, but I used your stuff and I passed. We get loads of comments like that. And it's so annoying for me because you went and gave that company a load of money. They were rubbish. And you gave us absolutely zilch and you passed thanks to us. Well, just do me a favor if that's you. Just tell everyone about us. That's all. Just you know, word of mouth referrals, super useful. Remember, I need your email if you want the recording and the presentation. I'll send that to you tomorrow. And that is it. So we're done. Let's have a look at the chat, see if I had any questions coming in. So I've got some people studying with Phoenix. I've got some people studying with RRC. Yeah, they're two of the biggest companies out there. Been going for a very long time. And I've got no questions. Okay, no questions at all. So I'm going to stop the recording now. Thank you so much for attending. You are free to shoot off, but I will stay for a little bit if anyone's got any verbal questions. So bye-bye and stop the recording.